Today, we are diving into the story of a man who wasn't just a king, he was a legend, Alexander the Great. His story is about more than just winning battles. It's about an ambition so huge it literally redrew the map of the ancient world.
And this is the question, right? The one that just blows your mind. How on earth did one person, from a kingdom most people look down on, manage to build one of the biggest empires in history in just about a decade? It seems completely impossible. To even begin to understand how, you have to see where he started. You really have to picture this to get it. Over here, you've got Macedonia. To the powerful Greek city-states like Athens, these guys were basically backwater nobodies. And over here, the Persian Empire, the absolute superpower of the age, stretching from Egypt all the way to India. It was David versus Goliath, but Goliath was even bigger. But here's the thing. Alexander didn't start from scratch. He inherited a secret weapon, you could say, a truly revolutionary war machine built by his father, King Philip II. And that's where this story really kicks off. Okay, so the core of this new army was a game-changing piece of tech, the sarissa. Now, this wasn't just a spear. We're talking about an 18-foot-long pike. It was so long that the first 5 ranks of soldiers could all point their pikes forward at the enemy at the same time. It created this terrifying walking wall of spear points that was pretty much unstoppable from the front. And Philip paired this new weapon with a brilliant strategy, the hammer and anvil. It sounds simple, but it was absolutely devastating. First, the infantry phalanx, that's the anvil, marches forward and just pins the enemy army. They can't go anywhere. Then, while they're stuck, the elite companion cavalry, the hammer, smashes into their side or their back, completely shattering their formation. Genius. And then, just as this new army is ready, Philip is assassinated. So at just 20 years old, Alexander, who, by the way, was tutored by Aristotle himself, is suddenly king. He inherits this incredible army, and he inherits his father's ultimate dream, the conquest of Persia. So what does he do? He takes his father's army and immediately crosses into Asia. You have to understand, this wasn't just an invasion. This was an absolutely audacious gamble that could have ended in total disaster at any moment. Pretty early in his campaign, he gets to the city of Gordium, where he's faced with this legendary test of destiny, the Gordian knot. It was this incredibly complicated knot, and an old prophecy said that whoever could untie it was fated to rule all of Asia. And this moment, it tells you everything you need to know about Alexander. He doesn't waste time trying to play by the rules. He looks at this impossible knot, realizes there's no way to untie it, so he just pulls out his sword and slices it right in half. Problem solved. For him, it was always about the result. And you see that same decisiveness on the battlefield. At the Battle of Issus, he's facing the Persian king Darius III himself, and he's totally outnumbered. So what does he do? He leads a cavalry charge straight at Darius. The king just panics and flees so fast, he literally leaves everything behind. His royal chariot, his weapons, even his own wife and kids. The second the Persian army saw their king run, their morale just collapsed. It's after this huge victory at Issus that you start to see a change in him. Alexander's ambition starts to grow beyond just beating Persia. He starts to see himself as something more than a mere king. So after that defeat, Darius sends an incredible peace offer. He offers Alexander half of his entire empire, his daughter in marriage, and a ridiculous amount of gold. I mean, it's the deal of a lifetime. Alexander's most experienced general, Parmenion, tells him, "If I were you, I would take that deal." And Alexander's reply is one of the most famous and coldest lines in history. He just says, "If I were Parmenion, so would I." It's basically him saying, you and I are not the same. He didn't come for half the world, he came for all of it. And if you want to see that ambition in action, just look at the siege of Tyre. This city was an island fortress. Everyone thought it was unconquerable. Alexander's solution? He tells his engineers to build a half-mile-long bridge, a causeway, through the sea just to get to its walls. It took 7 insane months, but they did it. His will was just absolute. From there, he marches into Egypt. Now, the Egyptians hated being ruled by the Persians, so they welcomed him as a liberator. They actually crown him pharaoh. And then comes this crucial moment. The priests at the Oracle of Siwa declare him to be the son of their main god, Amun, who the Greeks basically saw as their god Zeus. This is the moment Alexander really starts to believe he's divine. So he's got the entire Mediterranean coast secured.
And in his own mind, at least, his divine status has been confirmed. Now he turns inland for one final showdown to decide who will be the lord of all Asia. This is the big one, Gaugamela. Darius gathers another gigantic army. But Alexander pulls off this brilliant move where he shifts his army to the right, which makes the Persian line stretch out to follow him. This creates a tiny gap, and the second it opens, Alexander charges right through it with his cavalry, making a beeline for Darius. And for the second time, the King of Kings turns his chariot and runs for his life. With Darius gone, the war was over. Alexander marches into Persepolis, the grand ceremonial capital of Persia. And then, in a final, brutal act of revenge for the burning of Athens 150 years earlier, he orders the magnificent city to be burned to the ground. The Persian Empire was gone. But you'd think conquering the largest empire on Earth would be enough, right? Nope, not for Alexander. For him, Persia was just the beginning. He's driven by this bottomless need to see and conquer everything, so he pushes his army east, further and further, towards what he thought was the edge of the world. And it's out here that he finally hits a wall he can't break through. See, as Alexander became lord of Asia, he started adopting Persian customs, and this created a huge cultural clash. His Macedonian soldiers, they were used to being pretty frank with their king, speaking their minds. But now, Alexander starts demanding they perform proskinsis, which means getting on the ground and prostrating themselves before him. To the Greeks, that was an act you only did for a god. And these tensions just boiled over in the most tragic way imaginable. At a banquet, his close friend Clytus, the very same guy who saved Alexander's life in his very first battle, drunkenly calls him out for adopting all these barbarian customs. And in a drunken rage, Alexander grabs a spear and kills him on the spot. It was this horrifying moment of hubris that he apparently regretted for the rest of his life. I mean, just think about what his men had been through. They followed him through deserts, over the Hindu Kush mountains, against armies with ridiculous numbers. They'd been marching for 8 years across thousands and thousands of miles. So what was it? What was the final straw? It happened in India, at the Hyphasis River. His army had just fought this absolutely brutal battle against a king who had war elephants. They were exhausted, homesick, and then they hear that there are even bigger Indian armies waiting for them just across the river. And they just broke. The army mutinied. They refused to go one step further. It was the one battle Alexander could never win. He was forced to turn back, but his time was running out. His explosive, incredible life would have an equally sudden end, and that end would give birth to a whole new world. While he was in Babylon planning his next campaign to conquer Arabia, Alexander caught a fever and died within days. He had conquered the known world. And he was just 32 years old. So what happens to this giant empire? Well, without a clear heir, it shatters almost overnight. His top generals, the successors, immediately start fighting each other for the pieces, carving up his empire into new kingdoms, like the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt and the Seleucid Empire in the east. His physical empire was gone, but his cultural empire, that had just begun. His conquest spread Greek language, art, and ideas all across the East, kicking off a brand new Hellenistic age that would last for 300 years. So we're left with this massive question. Who was he? Was he this visionary unifier who tried to blend East and West, a founder of cities and a spreader of knowledge? Or was he a ruthless conqueror, a brilliant destroyer who left a trail of burned cities and millions dead in his quest for glory? The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle. And that leaves us to wrestle with the legacy of a man who, for one brief, blazing moment, was master of the world.